take care of you, sir, but we also want to take care of our children and our grandchildren. And that's what it's about.
Everybody asks me what question. No. Well, everybody always asks me, what would you ask if I ever got a chance to speak to my state senator? Boy, there are a lot to say. I've been from one inspector to the next. Get him out of there. We needed McCain to go home to get another one in there. You know, all over the page. But I guess overall, it boils down to there is a great divide.
I was in Sky Harbor Airport. A guy came up to me and said, does anybody ever tell you look a lot like Senator John McCain? I said, yeah. He said, doesn't it just make you mad as hell?
Politically and historically, I'm a Native American, but we own our lands. My aunt's our tribal historian. I have a wealth of information socially and politically. My statement will make sense for the question. There is a huge divide between different ideals, whether we want social policies and who's going to pay for it, whether we're Republican, we want individual liberties and freedoms and pursue happiness. That is his job and his role to help us pursue that. When we keep hearing tax the rich, I may not be rich, but I know if you're going to take any more of my money, I'm going to hide it. Okay? And that is what a rich person is going to do. They will. They take their business and their jobs overseas where they can make a profit. And of course they have. But for the most part, most of this economic woe that we are in is because we have had a house that has been mostly ran and controlled by a social network. My question to you, McCain, is we have a huge mess in our house. I have to keep my house under control. Okay? I'm driving an old truck. I had to sell the Durango, couldn't afford it. Gas is too high. I had 5 jobs this year, lost one just last Thursday. Okay? Thank God that we live within our means. I've never owned a credit card my entire life. Everything I do, I pay for cash. I am 55 years old. I've raised 6 kids. I've been on a farm. I live up on Duck Mountain now. My question to you is, you have allowed my borders to be an open door like people come in my borders. And without any accountability and no responsibility. Now I just have to keep spending and providing and paying. And we have double and triple dippers and pension plans with my neighbors, my public servants. And I don't even have a pension. I'll never have one. And they're what are we going to do about that? If we're going to put a house in order, we need to get real about my money and how many times it's being licked into.
Well, thank you very much for the question and comment, and thank you. You mentioned about the immigration issue. We still do not have our borders secured. According to the General Accountability Office, our borders are 44% secure. There have been improvements. John Kyle and I have a 10-point plan that if we implemented that, we would be able to succeed. My plan, I think, I would like to see, what I would like to see happen in the next few days here, really, is for the President of the United States, who is elected to lead. Remember, Republicans only control 1/3 of the government. It would come forward with a specific plan we're putting everything on the table and saying, okay, this is my plan. I want to work with the Congress, and the Congress come back to Washington. We're on vacation now, as you know. Come back to Washington, sit down together, not for the select committee, but we don't have to wait for the select committee. The President is yet to come forward with a specific plan. And the Presidents are supposed to lead. And then we could all sit down together, all of us, no matter how passionate we are about certain aspects. But America needs to come together. And we need to sit down and work on this issue, not for our sake, but our kids and our grandkids. Yes, ma'am. bring you a microphone.
Thank you for coming out today, Senator McCain. I would hope in the future you might choose a slightly larger venue, especially after such a combative debate over the debt ceiling so that more people could have participated or at least listened to hear you. One of my concerns, before I even get into my real question, is that I'm encouraging my children to be active participants in their democracy. My oldest son, Alex, will be voting in the next year. And I've encouraged him, when he's felt passionate about something, to contact your offices. Every time I have tried to contact your office over the last 2 years, I just get a full voicemail box. And it's very be responsive to you about my concerns in time to step with the legislative amendment if we can't get through to you.
Well, let me just respond very quickly to your first comment. I'll be glad to give you the logs of the thousands of calls that we have returned. But go ahead.
Well, the problem is, I think that's great.
Yeah,
But
we return and we answer letters.
But I never even get into your voicemail.
I'm sorry you can't call again. We will.
I've tried time.
We'll have somebody come, one of our staff is here to talk to you today. Go
Okay,
ahead.
and just a little nitpick. When we go online and we have to select in what categories and things, I have a doctorate. My husband does not. So I'm not a doctor in Mrs. And I've even written you guys, can we have a doctor in Mr.? I mean,
Check that out.
So, I was raised by feminists. My father was a feminist, as was my mother. And I'm proud of my degrees. And I'd like to not have to.
Doctor, I will have a staff member. Immediately, we will fix that problem.
Now, my son has some questions about the math on the unemployment.
Good. Those come from the Congressional Budget Office.
Yeah, in particular, I'm just curious. I'm going to be a senior this year. I'm going into calculus AB, but I'm not. But I'm a little confused on the percentages, and I'm not saying they're wrong. I don't understand them. Like you have the unemployment rate of 7.8 and 9.2, and you get
It's 9.1 as a few days ago. Yeah.
But it says it changed 18%, and then also with the $1.85 of gas price to $3.71.
Well, if there's any, by the way, if there's any good news about this, if there's any good news, it's that the price of oil is going down, but that's because of the bad news that they think there's going to be less of a demand for oil, which is really unfortunate.
And that's back to our question, which was, when TARP passed, my understanding was that Congress, I don't know if it's coming from Congress or a separate entity, was going to put regulations, which I know you're not liking, on speculation on oil. And I would say that
I did not see that in TARP.
I thought that, I understood that there was going to be, or there was discussion about putting caps on speculation on oil, which has affected our gas prices.
That wasn't.
Well,
Anyway, go ahead.
okay. So my concern is, one, when you ran for office, you talked about nuclear power. Our state doesn't have enough water really to support that. And I was wondering, what kind of measures are you interested in supporting for jobs here in the state that would support other renewables like wind and solar? We have 3 wonderful state universities, and it's a shame that we do not have an endowed chair when we can't ever get there. And especially like with healthcare, I also think that
You have to conclude.
I am really grateful for the gentleman here. I had stopped my teaching at the university because I was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension. I've spent $200,000 a year on medication. And to stop private insurance companies from making it difficult for us to continue to make our careers.
Thank you very much. You covered a lot of ground. Thank you. And to your son, I'll be glad to send you the CBO, Congressional Budget Office numbers, which those numbers are based on. They're not entirely up to date, obviously, on the events of the last several days, but we will be correcting them for future town hall meetings. You covered a lot of territory. Thank you for your involvement. Thank you for your engagement. And I would point out, this lady has a point. About 10 years ago, independent registration in Arizona, I believe, was around 10%. Now it's up to 30%. We're up to 30, basically one-third. And that is because of the rise of independent voters, because obviously they've not been satisfied by either party. Look, on the issue of renewables and wind and tide and solar and all that, I think that Arizona is ideal, obviously, for solar. We are ideal for some of those. But I also think that there's time that sometimes they distort the market. For example, ethanol subsidies are the biggest ripoff in history. I'm a little nervous about this issue of how we're going to take government money and put it into certain projects. Now, I think that there are certain areas that they should be. But right now, we have a huge problem with obviously with the debt and the deficit that I've been trying to point out. And we're going to have to make some tough decisions which will not be acceptable to a lot of people. Now, I see sitting there two very unhappy veterans, one of them U.S. Navy and the other one Air Force. I was going to say, excuse me, with hats on that are unhappy.
I'm unhappy with what I've heard so far.
I don't blame you. So, who wants to go first, Air Force or Navy?
Navy.
Navy. Chief Petty Officer, Navy, who everything I have learned about leadership, I learned from a Chief Petty Officer.
Yeah.
We trained you well.
Well said.
She wants to know when you guys are going to put pointed fingers and get down to work.
I say, sir, you make a very legitimate point, and it's reflected in the polls I just talked about earlier. I would remind you that for the first 2 years of the Obama presidency, for most of the first 2 years, they had 60 votes in the Senate, which override the filibuster, and they had a majority in the House of Representatives. We got Obamacare, we got Dodd-Frank, we got the so-called stimulus package, and in November, the American people told us to stop it. So one thing I know, sir, because I ran for re-election, I know what the message of the people of Arizona was. And they said, stop mortgaging our children and our grandchildren's future. Stop this unsustainable path which will bankrupt the country. Yeah. Now, we were talking about benefits. This gentleman and this gentleman were talking about Medicare and all that. You know what happened in Greece? And we're not going to be Greece, by the way. You know what happened in Greece? When their economy collapsed, the first thing that went was entitlements. We've got to preserve these entitlements for present and future generations. But some changes have to be made. Let me just tell you one. In Social Security, we should be raising the retirement age gradually, not to affect